Okay, so I had you read this paper not because of AI. I think everybody's probably spending a lot of time thinking about how AI is going to impact the world, but because in this paper we talk about other general purpose technologies and we talk about production revolutions. And so we use these examples of previous general purpose technologies like the steam engine, the internal combustion engine, electricity, and computers as analogies for different types of AI. And so really the paper is written because we were not happy with the definitions and the terms people were using to describe the transformative potential that AI can have for society. And I think what's important about this paper and to consider in the world building process is that AI, and particularly the type of AI that we describe in this paper, transformative AI, if you don't get all the way to radically transformative AI, has the potential to unlock other general purpose technologies that could be similarly transformative, maybe transformative AI, maybe even radically transformative AI. So we talk about AI not being only as transformative as previous general purpose technologies. In the paper, we also talk about AI being as transformative as previous production revolutions. And so there's only two examples of that we really have in human history, and that's the agricultural or Neolithic revolution, which occurred about 10,000 years ago. And that gave us farming and enabled people to stop being nomadic, and it allowed us to create civilizations and cities and all kinds of things that led to real technological progress. Before that, we were very limited in what kinds of technologies we were creating. And then the second really big production revolution is it comes from the steam engine, and in combination with the steam engine coal that was used. It comes from the steam engine and the steam engine's ability to harness the power of natural resources for powering industry like coal. So without coal, we really, and an abundance of coal, the steam engine alone would not have produced the industrial revolution and would not have led to the explosion of productivity that we've seen. So two really strong measures for assessing human progress as a whole are GDP and war-making capacity. And I like this plot because it shows you where exactly the industrial revolution occurs. And you can see a discontinuity in the rate of change for these two measures of human progress that occurs during the Industrial Revolution. It's just a sharp turn, and it becomes, what we're seeing here, it becomes exponential growth. So that sort of level of societal transformation is what a lot of people expect AI to lead to. And there are different ways that AI could lead to that. With AI, we have, in technological, like forecasting in general and understanding technological progress, we can think of technological S-curves. And so you have underlying technologies that drive larger trends. And so on the left here, this just shows you the general concept of technological S-curves. And with things like Moore's Law, it's driven by underlying technologies in photolithography that enable making smaller and smaller transistors and increasing the number of transistors on a chip. And eventually it may run out. And so we see here, this is a projection from the 1960s or 1970s, or maybe the 1950s, from the US Air Force, where they were trying to understand future powered like transportation. And so you can see here that they were projecting that you would have nuclear rockets or other sorts of propulsion driving humans faster and closer to the speed of light. But what's really happened, if you look at the real plot, and I didn't put this together, but I do have the data plotted, it actually plateaus. There was a satellite or a NASA project in 1970 something that kind of plateaued for a long time. And then about 2009 or sometime in the past 10 years, something marginally increased the speed of human powered craft in the universe. But what's happened is it's plateaued and it's turned into the micro S curves collectively have turned into a macro S curve. And so there are a lot of reasons to think that, scaling of AI is going to continue, but there are also reasons to believe that, the underlying technologies, if you look at CNNs and then think of maybe RNNs and LSTMs and the transformer, the CNNs have not continued to scale. The recurrent neural networks and derivatives of them, like long short-term memories, have not continued to scale. And so you can think of those as different technologies. And so the question is, how far do transformers scale? If we look at like the history of technology, transformers should run into some limitation at some point. And so how far that gets us is an open question. And whether we come up with a new technology is an open question. We'll probably see something that succeeds it, but it's unclear how far we're going to get. So if we don't actually get to radically transformative AI, which is what I'm suggesting we could think of as being similar to a production revolution, then we would be at transformative AI. And that could lead to really great changes in scientific progress and big scientific breakthroughs, potentially scientific breakthroughs in atomically precise manufacturing, synthetic biology, or other GPTs that could similarly have the potential to lead to radical societal transformation. And so that's the reason I wanted you to read this paper, was not really to consider the AI as much as the fact that there are other general purpose technologies that are possible that could be accelerated by transformative AI that could really have a significant impact on the world. And these are things I've talked to, I know people like Eric Drexler are expecting this sort of stuff, but I guess he's a little bit biased towards the atomically precise manufacturing. But he has pointed me towards papers that suggest that it is feasible that these sorts of technologies could emerge relatively quickly. You can think back to AlphaFold and the solving of the protein folding problem. I think 3 or 4 years prior to DeepMind publishing that work, nobody thought that was possible within 10 years. And DeepMind completely surprised everybody with that. And so I think everybody spends a lot of time thinking about how AI itself is going to impact society and have a transformative impact on futures. But AI, even if it doesn't have those more widely talked about impacts, could have a significant impact on science and lead to some of these other really powerful general purpose technologies that are likely worth considering in the world building exercise. So there also, I put other GPTs up here. I can't think of anything that would be as significant as these two. I think atomically precise manufacturing and synthetic biology could probably lead to radical societal transformation if fully realized. But again, you could go back and think you might see these emerge as S curves too. So you might see incremental progress toward these once you get them emerging. So I just wanted to point this out and maybe get you guys thinking a little bit differently about about how you're envisioning your future worlds. With that, I'm happy to take questions, and I've been working on other things related to AI, governance related. I'm very interested in coordination on evaluations and testing of advanced AI systems in order to mitigate risks. And I think that needs to be done at an international level. but we right now have just a lot of national level stuff. And I'm actively working on trying to do all of this. So happy to take questions on anything that you think I could be of help with.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that this is super interesting. And that is one of the constraints that we have on this world, is that there's not going to be AGI, which is a very interesting constraint in that it's going to force you guys to think a bit more practically about a lot of the challenges, because you can't just say, oh, AGI came and solved everything also. And then there's also the question of all the other technologies that could come even from a sort of narrow AI. But yeah, thank you so much, Ross. Any questions from anyone?
I do have a question for Ross.
Yes.
Hey, Ross, you mentioned atomically precise manufacturing, and I was wondering if you could just paint a picture on like how you see that becoming one of those radically transformational technologies. Because I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Okay. I think there are probably people here that can explain it better than me, but I will try. Atomically precise manufacturing is manufacturing at the atomic level, organizing atoms and molecules in such a way that you can create other molecules. You can basically have factories and like precision engineering at a nanoscale. And so with that, you can really build any sort of molecular structure that we see and we use. And so you could deconstruct existing elements and compounds and use them as materials to create all kinds of advanced composite materials or really strong materials. And you could use this to construct like buildings, space elevators, medicines. It could be entirely revolutionary. I think somebody else, probably like Beatrice and Allison, have a little bit more experience in atomically precise manufacturing than I do. But it really could be, I think even more so than synthetic biology, a radically transformative technology. The thing Eric Drexler would hate me for talking about would be gray goo, but that's the stereotypical example of how significant I think atomically precise manufacturing could be. It could just devour worlds and really have tremendous impacts on any sort of planet.
Yeah. I recommend reading Allison's article. She dropped it in the chat there.
I also read our 2020 workshop report on this if you want to go really into the weeds of in that area. But yeah, love that you brought it up, Ross. You're definitely speaking from my heart here. Aaron.
Cool, thanks. You said that the AI risk is also being looked at on a national level, and you think that an international effort is needed. Yeah, I would just be curious to hear, I guess, intuitions. What kind of like institute would that be? What kind of shape would this international collaboration take? Like your first ideas, not yet solved.
I think it's really unclear. And I think there's a lot of work that people are doing. And it's encouraging to see that people are working on this. But there's a lot of different things people are doing. This is a common, people agree on this. I'm doing a study that we just submitted to Science, and it compares experts' opinions to US voters' opinions on the impacts and the likelihoods of 18 different societal scale AI risks. And so the one thing that everybody agrees on, the only thing that there's consensus that like existential risks are less of a concern than other societal scale risks. And then the other thing that people agree on is that there needs to be international cooperation on governance of these issues, as opposed to letting the tech companies manage it or to having national governments manage it. But what it looks like is very unclear. Matthias Maas has written and is working on some reports that go over all of the different proposals, and there's a large number of them. And I think, building, like imagining an organization from the top down and just like creating it is much easier than doing it in practice. And I think what we're going to see is that the organizations that emerge, if we're able to do it, are going to be, they're going to have to come out of the things that we already have, like the NIST US AI Safety Institute Consortium and the US Safety Institute are going to have to take actions that push them more towards international cooperation. And they're going to have to be, as they're like these existing organizations that we have, the UK AI Safety Institute, Singaporean equivalent, and the US AI Safety Institute are going to have to take the leadership role in determining what these look like. And so it's really hard to know. There are ideal organizations, but I don't think we're ever going to get these ideal organizations. It would be nice if we could get an organization in the US State Department or a completely international consortium like this. I've written a paper on this, where you have all nations with equal voting power, but that's just it's not realistic, at least not in the near term. So I don't think I have a great answer for you, because I'm thinking more practically along the lines of how do we actually do this and get it done, instead of what is the ideal. But if you want to look at something that really does a good job of comparing all of the different proposals, you can look at Matthias Maas's several of his recent reports. He's been doing a lot of great work, and I think he's actually got a book that is being edited right now and should be out relatively soon.
Great. Antoine, you're next.
Oh, thank you so much, Ross. I think it's so useful to look at a historical example. I think that a feature of all past GPTs is that it actually took a long time between the technological advancement and the effect on productivity. I think for electricity, it's 20 years before we see the effect. So my question is about AI. Do you think it's going to take a long time between the technological milestone of AI and the actual transformative effect? Or do you think it's going to be quicker this time?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that what we have right now, the AI technologies we have right now, are what I would characterize as transformative AI. And so with enough engineering, even if you stop progress entirely right now, with enough engineering, these tools are going to become very powerful. You can think of the Excel spreadsheet, or like the spreadsheet in general, in 1982, and it had really limited functionality. But with 40 years of engineering, now you can do a lot more with it. And that's what we have with those tools. They're really able to, the general purpose tools are going to become really powerful, even if we just continue to engineer them. And we still have a lot of really powerful scientific tools that have yet to really be realized. Like, we haven't seen the true impact of AlphaFold, and we haven't seen the true economic impact yet of tools like GPT-4 or Gemini or Claude 3. And I'm working with some of these in the classes that I teach. I try to stay ahead and show students how to use these tools. And so I see a lot of potential. They're able to automate a lot of analytics tasks, because I teach business analytics, and they're able to automate a lot of those tasks. And I think even without any further advances in 20 years, the jobs that we're training students for are going to be tremendously different. So I think we're already at a point where we have transformative AI, and it's just not like we're not seeing the impacts yet. So there is going to be a lag, certainly. Now, if we get more powerful, radically transformative AI, then maybe the lag diminishes, but it's still certainly going to be some sort of a lag between when we actually reach the technology and when we start seeing the productivity gains from the technology.
Thank you. Kevin, your question.
Thanks for the presentation. And despite being a really dumb question, but I was wondering, how much is AI development dependent on data? Is it equal for the Steve mentioned? And can we imagine a wildcard scenario in the future where, for example, due to data rights, the cost of data is really high? Due to privacy concerns, there's growing market for non-IoT, non-data collecting technologies. And because of this cost of cybersecurity, like firms don't want to collect data anymore. Can we imagine this kind of scenario where there's not much data collection happening? And how will that impact AI?
I mean, I think the questions about how much data is necessary for scaling are open questions. I will point out though that right now we're probably getting close to reaching the limits in terms of orders of magnitude of the amount of text and image data that we have available. Because we're using most of the data that's publicly available on the internet. And at this point, to increase that by another order of magnitude is much, much more difficult than increasing the number of parameters in the model that we're training. That just costs a certain amount of money and we can do it. But generating that data is much more difficult. What people look at are ways that people are looking at synthetic data generation. And that's something that it's unclear how well that works or how well that's going to support scaling. And so talking about an S curve, that could slow things down possibly. Another thing to consider though, is that we haven't tapped in to other modalities of data, such as video data. Or if Google has, it's not clear yet how they've done it. But Google has certainly an advantage there in owning YouTube, because I don't know I think YouTube probably has orders of magnitude more video data than any other organization in the entire world. And so if video data can be harnessed, especially if it can be harnessed to train models, to prepare models for embodiment in the real world, then that could lead to some significant challenges or significant breakthroughs. Like it could probably greatly help multimodal models in the future adapt to interacting in the real world through robotic embodiments more quickly. But yeah, it's really unclear what's going to happen with data. I know that there are people at firms like OpenAI and Facebook and Google and Anthropic that work entirely on data curation. And then the quality of the data is very important. So getting rid of the noise and ensuring that you have high quality data is really important. But it's just not clear whether it's going to continue scaling. I don't know whether some of the questions you were asking would be relevant. But also, if it was going to continue scaling, you would have to have so much more data that I don't think collecting more data is going to increase like the amount of data that you can use by orders of magnitude. It's probably going to have to go to synthetic data to drive further scaling.
Great. Last two questions. We don't have that much time left, but Luna, you go, and then Justin.
Sure. I'll be very brief. So my question is regarding how, let's say, a general purpose technology, radically transformed general purpose technology influenced by AI, and how that, if that happens, or how that is going to impact the average human being's life experience. Let's say, if we invented technology where we can very precisely print any organ, customized to any human on Earth, but how is that according to you, or let's just say how that is actually going to look like for the average human being? There's two scenarios I can think of. One is that technology is available, but it exists, but it may not be available to the majority of us, or it could be available and to practically any human being, either through their private or national health insurance, or maybe, AI could help them in the sense that they could connect to any other organization in the world to get that support. So I guess my question here is that, do you believe that AI could also help not only develop that technology, but also transform how that technology is applied to the average human being?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think that in general, when you're talking about radically transformative technologies, you're only the only ones that really, I think, could reach that level independently would be atomically precise manufacturing and AI. Because what that means in my interpretation in the paper is that like with other production revolutions, if you were alive before and then you were transformed, or like you moved to in the agricultural revolution 5,000 years later and looked at society, you wouldn't recognize it. You would not have imagined any of these things being possible. And it's the same with the industrial revolution. If you were around in 1750 and then you came back in 1950, you just wouldn't have imagined any of these things being possible. So the levels of transformation there with radically transformative technologies are just so significant that it's really hard for us to understand. But when we talk about having different S-curve levels and having, you could have different levels of atomically precise manufacturing. You might not necessarily get to the AGI equivalent of atomically precise manufacturing immediately, or you may never get to it. Maybe there's fundamental physical limits that prohibit precision engineering at a certain level. I think Eric Drexler's probably proven that wrong, but there may be things that we don't anticipate. And with trying to use AI to ensure that technology is more or used by the entire world, I think, yeah, that's certainly highly likely. There still might be a huge income inequality gap, but it's in the interest of the people who own the technologies to make them as cheap as possible, to grow their own income and to provide them to more people. So hopefully when we do that, the income inequality gap, it doesn't matter as much with respect to people's well-being. And you can have greater well-being and still high qualities of life, even in lower income areas, because more powerful technologies have been, given, or like those parts of the world have more powerful technology that improve their lives in a disproportionate way to how the lives of the first world would be improved.
Last question for Justin, and then we have to round off so we have time to talk logistics as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I love this paper. I've been using it in some work exploring transformative AI as a concept. For this part, we're working on the assumption that AGI doesn't come. And I agree with you. I think we already have, after looking, thinking about it, I think these tools are transformative, the ones we already have. So if we're looking forward to 2045 and thinking about how AI might develop, but not towards AGI, Drexler's comprehensive AI services and his recent stuff on roles and responsibilities and open agency is what I think is the most compelling argument of a direction we might or could go. Do you know of others you find his reasoning here compelling? And then also, the UN is doing this high-level AI body. I think, when you were saying things about global governance, you didn't mention that or mention the UN. I'm a little more optimistic that we could get something out of the UN with some teeth. I don't know if you have time to address both these, but I'd be curious your thoughts about that.
In general, I do think I agree with a lot of Eric's thinking. I haven't read the more recent stuff, but like I've cited comprehensive AI services, the Rethinking Intelligence paper more than anybody. Probably, I don't know. Last time I checked, I had at least twice as many citations than anybody else. Yeah, I agree with it, which is why I am mentioning discussions with Eric here. Yeah, I think his thinking is pretty solid on some of these things. His timelines are short sometimes. I talked to him in 2019 and he thought we'd be at radically transformative stuff by now. And yeah, then I talked to him like earlier or last year. And yeah, he told me that I was mistaken about his timelines, but then he gave me some revised timelines. But yeah, in general, I agree with the UN situation. That's ideal, but I don't see anybody being able to buy into it. There's too much at stake with AI, like economically and with respect to power and like global balance of power. So I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that something does materialize, but I'm working actively to try to find alternative paths through more likely channels, I think.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ross. It was a pleasure having you. And yeah, we'll see you again, hopefully.
Okay. Thank you.